absolutely no reason to give a teenager the power to control time. But whatever. They also have a tree that can kill you on sight, and people send their children here. But it's brilliant because it gets to the end, they go back in time, and that explains the strange events that had been happening all through the movie. I thought it was really brave, and I thought it was really smart. And yes, absolutely, Hogwarts needs to be shut down. And you jump from that to like movies that seem like theoretical physics. You know who I'm talking about, Christopher fucking Nolan. Between Interstellar and Tenet, and I mean, his movies just feel like classes rather than movies, which is fine because they're really interesting classes. But I think Interstellar plays with the end. Interstellar and probably Interstellar with slowing things down. Star Trek: The Voyage Home with speeding things up. But the idea that speed can have an effect on how we experience time, I think both of those movies did it really well. Like I think both of those nailed it. And then I feel like a new genre, kind of a genre in time travel, is like the repetitive that people just keep getting sent back in time to try to fix something. It's basically Groundhog's Day, right? Groundhog's Day is a time travel movie. I love that they never bother explaining, like, was it a curse from a witch or did he just slip into like the spit? No, just shit happens to Bill Murray. Like, just don't you know Bill Murray? Weird shit happens to Bill Murray, so that's why. Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, a movie that should not have been kind of funny, but it was kind of funny. Like, yo, just watch it. It's not supposed to be funny, but it ends up being like just Groundhog's Day with, mech suits and giant monsters. That should be all I need to say. Yeah, that's all I need to say. Source Code is another good one. Again, kind of a depressing movie, but Source Code is another one. And I think like for those, it really shows how a time travel element really helps the suspense. Like it can really make things suspenseful. It doesn't sound like you should say time travel, like we're just going to go like, it's going to be every episode, every movie is going to be the Voyagers, and is anybody remember the Voyagers? The Omni.
Shout out to the Voyagers.
All right, cool.
God
right?
Damn, I love that show.
Right, yeah, the Voyagers, or Quantum Leap was kind of a time travel show too, right? Like again. But I think the next thing is going to be, because we were also talking about Doctor Who in our warm up, and our warm up, we were talking, Doctor Who, that's interdimensional too. So now you're talking about dimensions and time. Whoa, it just got heavy. Now I'm gonna get sick of it. I won't lie. Like I get tired with a lot of tropes, and because of Loki and Doctor Strange, the Marvel movies are just going to have all sorts of which they already do in the comics. It's a staple of all comics. There's like 50 million versions of Batman, easily. And you can bounce around in time and in space on this theme. So how can you do that the way that they did it in Loki? Loki, it seemed like there was nothing that had to do with dimensions specifically, but there were a ton of timelines. Some of those timelines tied into each other. Again, you don't have to figure out what you're doing with them all. I don't care how curious the fan base is. We're just making shit up now. And that's the big plus of it. That's the big plus of it. You get to recycle themes from a lot of the same characters, and you don't have to worry about tying up every single thing with every alternate version, because everybody's just thrilled with the alternate version. So for those, probably DC with where Superman turns evil. I can't remember the name of it. RaShaun?
He's working on the research right now.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's on the tip of my
right. I can remember the story better than I can. I think it's Injustice.
Yes, I'm not even looking at it. I'm calling it from cheap seats. You're right.
I mean, Injustice, you could build an entire other DC on that. And I'm gonna go with Flashpoint Paradox is probably the best. I mean, that's kind of the one that started it. And actually, no, there's a DC movie. There's an animated movie version. I think they're supposed to be making a big screen version, but I'm not sure. But the animated version, it does the job. But I have to at least mention Flashpoint Paradox because when it came to making alternate versions of all of the DC characters, it got the deepest and it really showed the kind of twists and surprises that you can throw into not just the alternate versions, but the time travel element of all of them too, because you can pop up in the 50s. Red Sun, that's communist Superman. You know, you can again go back to the start of the Cold War. You can take it from anywhere with the alternate dimension. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about alternate dimensions after a couple of years of it, because you know Disney, like they're gonna ride this out. They're gonna ride it. They're gonna ride it.
Milk that cow.
Absolutely.
Woo!
You know, but for now, I'm cautiously optimistic because I think that's going to be the future of time travel movies. A lot of alternate dimensions.
Yeah, interdimensional time travel. We get the interdimensional time travel. I love. I'm gonna quickly hit on your Harry Potter point because I love it. Because you also point out the writing device that time travel and magic are, right? Yeah. It's that point of like, well, why? I don't know magic. I don't know time travel. Both of them because time travel, because magic, because shut the fuck up, right? But it really is kind of one of those things that it's a bit lazy and a bit like hard to argue with. Yeah. No, because they jumped back in time before it happened. Is a convincing argument if you could do it. So amazing shout out to you there. Dude, 12 Monkeys.
Great movie.
12 Monkeys is a fantastic movie. And I am going to show you why we started this show right now in just a little moment where I was so impressed with myself and nobody gives a shit to this day. That is based on a French film called La Jetée.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. A great film that I saw in film school. And it's a filmed version of still photographs. So just one sort of like presented to you after another that tells the exact same story of 12 Monkeys and, you know, how everything happens and the paradox that's in it. I remember sitting in the movie theater with my then girlfriend, and within the first 30 seconds, I knew they were doing La Jetée, and I was like jumping out of my seat excited with myself. And she was just like, "You're paying money for this?" Right? Like you're paying an institution of higher learning hard-earned cash. It was mostly my dad's hard-earned cash for this, right? You know, so there you go. That's how I'll officially kick off my time. But that's amazing, Greg. I think my take on it on time travel is like the meme of like what you think it will be and what it actually is. What you think you look like, what you actually look like, right? Mm-hmm. In those two. Coming at it, and when you're talking about time, dimensions, and space, I'm coming at it from my childhood, which was Doctor Who. And Doctor Who is just the nerdiest shit. It is just like, you know, absolutely looking at it. None of you are looking at me right now like, boy, we're really surprised he watched that growing up.
To be fair, we established that both Greg and I had bouts of watching it. It's a much more universal show than the cis white man loves to believe.
I just don't think I need to watch 40 seasons of it.
Right. That's the sort of like, you know, it's that scene in Zombieland where he's like, you know, Mountain Dew, code red, you know, virginity, most likely still intact. Right, you know, right? That scene where he's looking at himself, or I can't look back at it. But that is how I wanted it to be, you know, like this kind of witty British dude jumping in his phone booth, right? Which I didn't even get the joke.
So I didn't see the last season because I'm just not watching anymore. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to watch anymore.
They got a little more overt in some of it. Yeah, like they did an episode on Rosa Parks, but the show was originally meant to teach history. It was sort of like the Transformers G.I. Joe thing.
I'm gonna need you to rewind that and play it back at normal speed. Did you say They did an episode about Rosa Parks.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Well, I guess we found
And the
where
British
we're-
guy,
Well,
the British guy who drives a bus knows the name of the bus driver who was trying to kick her off the bus in Alabama, right? So like, it was a bit front and
Carl?
center.
You talking
Yeah.
about Carl? Oh, I got it.
Exactly. Like,
Oh,
See, this right here is why black people don't want white people touching their stuff. You just did it. You knocked it out of the fucking park. Like, that is it right there.
Well, of course,
This is
but
why black people and white people start doing it's like, oh no.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Oh, no. What are you gonna do?
And it's the Back to the Future thing where they got to make sure everything happens like right. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like, we got to get Rosa on the bus, and then the lightning's gonna strike the bus, and then she'll go back to 1985. It's not quite that bad, but it has that air to it. Great Scott!
That was bad enough. It doesn't need to be any worse than that. That was fine.
I remember the first episode I ever saw, and it is a small act of rebellion on my part. It was called The Ark in Space, and we had tuned in. It was on our PBS channel. We were talking about this before the show. And this dude he has been infected by an alien creature, and it's bad 70s special effects. It is Tom Baker, who is the Doctor. Everybody else just kind of occupied the role. The man played it for 10 years. It is a show that is, kind of one of those things played by multiple actors, has spanned over 50 years. But this other actor pulls out his hand, and he looks at this green infected hand that he's looking at. And my mother was like, oh, hell no. right away. She's just like, turn this shit off. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, that's the fucking show I wanted to watch, because there was just something about it. It was like, it was like, oh my God, it's science fiction. And look at that fucking hand. Of course, my mother's telling me to turn this show off. But it's such that idyllic view of what you could do, jumping into some kind of spaceship that can travel not only through space and time. Oddly enough, it has a black hole at its center. So it's kind of trying to touch on the Christopher Nolan stuff that you talked about, right? It's like, how does it travel through time and space? Well, it slips through a black hole, and kind of just pops up wherever it wants. But everybody seemed always so safe, and it's sort of funny, going back, as I said, to Tom Baker, his one of his key lines was, "You like a jelly baby?" Right? Which were these, as far as I'm concerned, weed gummies. Looking back on it now, he was just trying to get everybody high. He was just traveling through time and space, trying to get everybody high. There are worse things to do, but there never seemed to be any of, as you say, the grandfather paradox, right? Any of the paradox, any of the trouble that you could possibly run into with time travel. The truth of the matter is, like, it looks so great from that standpoint. It looks like such a blast and such fun. Occasionally you run into these aliens that are just hell-bent on literally, in the case of the Daleks, exterminating people. My personal favorite, there was one in the recent seasons where they were trying to take over the world, and the main characters ended up in Germany with the Daleks speaking in German, and I'm like, God damn, that just they were always meant to be space Nazis, so it just works so well, like exterminatum. I'm like, that just kind of works. All right. But it just always seemed like such a fun romp. I really wanted that thing to materialize, the TARDIS, time and interdimensionals, interdimensions in space. That's what it stands for. To show up, and then I could just go off and have fun, and without consequence, and be back before dinner. Right? That's the that's the part of the meme of, like, how we think it's going to be. In actuality, it's such a shit show. It's such a bad idea on so many levels, just so many. I will go to a little bit of a film that is really one of my favorite little gems from the late 80s, probably 88, 89. It's a film called Millennium, which is all about time travel. The premise starts with a plane crash, interestingly enough. And what it turns out is that the future is so bad that in the past, they have to send people back agents back to get people off the planes just before they crash to bring them forward into the future to try and like help